based on the public reaction that we see on social media and the rest of the virtual world, apparently there are still many people who feel very strongly about Proton being a Malaysian-owned company. Speaking emotionally, I would like it to remain Malaysian, but speaking rationally, I know that this is becoming more and more difficult. While we do want to feel patriotic, we have to be fair to everyone involved, and this includes everyone that is working at Proton, the vendor ecosystem, the sales and marketing networks, the after-sales and service networks, and the Malaysian taxpayer. I've not lost sight of the reason why Proton was created. We needed a strong engine to drive our industrialization process then, and we continue to need this today. With global capitalism moving jobs to the cheapest labor market, we need high-skilled jobs more than ever. So, the auto industry has been a very successful part of many countries' strategy, especially developed economies such as Germany, Japan, South Korea, United States, and to the lesser extent, the UK, France, Italy, and even Sweden, in keeping high-skilled jobs within the economy. The decisions that we make today must take into account this national agenda for industrialization and high-income economy. But the question is, which country model do we follow, or do we need to develop our own model for the future? For example, the UK has a fairly healthy automotive industry, but they have lost ownership of most, if not all, of the brands that was theirs and that used to be produced there. Thailand is another economy that benefits greatly from the automotive industry without owning a single brand. The difference between the UK and Thailand is that the UK used to own the brands and they have the technical capabilities for designing and engineering the cars in their country, whereas Thailand has to depend on Japan or whichever country that's investing to design and engineer some of the products. And even those that are designed and engineered in Thailand, they are done under very close scrutiny or close guidance of the parent company. Malaysia, we have decided to have our own car company, and that has given us many pros and cons. And one of the benefits that it has brought us is that it has taught us many valuable lessons about the auto industry, about technology acquisition and technology development, and these lessons have been learned the hard way. Of course, some of the cons is that we had to put up protective barriers for Proton, and that in the early days scared many of the foreign car companies from investing here, and they went to Thailand. Right now, we are facing with the real possibility that Proton may pass on to foreign hands, because the company is losing market share to the point where it may no longer be viable. So does Proton need a strategic partner? Well, the short answer is yes. Why? Well, because Proton needs to raise its game and become genuinely competitive in the region. And despite the current best efforts, the brand continues to remain to have a very small share of the Malaysian market, and this is certainly not viable as a standalone car maker. While it is true that a foreign strategic partner is not a guarantee for success, at least it will inject a fresh approach, a new perspective into the company, and maybe give it new energy. If Proton wants to remain as a viable car maker, it needs to sell at least 200,000 cars a year to remain afloat. But even at that volume, they may not be able to compete against bigger car companies in terms of cost. And of course, Produa, we can see, is thriving at 200,000 units a year. But we have to bear in mind that Produa's shares or cost in research and development is shared with partners Daihatsu. And Daihatsu is one of the global leaders in the compact car market, so they're on top of their game when it comes to cost. And on top of that, they are also plugged into the Toyota universe, and that brings all sorts of competitive edge, from engineering to procurement to even long-term strategy. If Proton wants to be a competitive standalone brand, not just exist, then it needs to aim for at least around 500,000 cars a year. And we are basing this on what is happening in China. China is a highly competitive market, and there the smallest private car companies are surviving on similar volumes, 400 to 500,000 cars, and those that are doing well are doing probably over 1 million cars. To achieve that volume, Proton will have to be competitive within ASEAN at least, and that means catching up with cost levels achieved by Toyota and Honda. These are the two biggest players in the region. So in the short term, Proton will need new discipline and culture to bring it back to a survival level of around 150,000 units a year within the next 1 year, and then start to ramp up their efforts to achieve around 25% of market share by 2020. Bear in mind that the industry is projecting sales of around 1 million units by 2020, so that means at least 250,000 cars by 2020. Or if we believe the pessimists, at least we're looking at a number of around 850,000 units a year by 2020, which still translates to about 212,000 units a year for Proton. A fact, no Malaysian car company has achieved cost competitiveness that can rival Toyota or Honda in Thailand. Now, Thailand produces nearly 2 million vehicles last year in 2016, and nearly 1.2 million are exported. According to the Malaysian Automotive Association, we produced 614,000 cars in 2015. That's our best year. In 2016, our production number will probably be nearer 600,000 units given the softer market. Together with other local and global brands, Proton plays an important role in pushing the Malaysian auto industry forward. Actually, everyone has to work hard to increase our production volume to match. Thailand's doing 2 million. We need to get at least 1 million. But that can only happen if let's say, we export. And we can only export if we are competitive. So what is the situation at Proton now? Well, according to the best industry estimates, current sales figures will not allow Proton to turn a profit. We know this because in the past, even with better sales of over 120,000 units per year, Proton doesn't always show a profit. The leaner Proton now, according to some observers, may be able to turn a profit with around 120,000 units a year. And this is why we hear Proton CEO Dato' Ahmad Fuad Kenali mentioning a target of 10,000 units a month. So can Proton continue as a wholly Malaysian company? Now, obviously it can, but it all depends on whether it will be able to pull itself out of the current loss-making situation. There is no crystal ball that can tell us if Proton can or cannot be profitable in the future as a Malaysian-owned company. But as it stands, there are no Malaysian companies raising their hand and rushing in to buy a stake in Proton because it is a massive financial undertaking. And that's before we take a look at the changes that needs to happen to the company before it can begin to operate competitively. Well, some people ask whether Proton can just, sell off Tanjung Malim or sell off Shah Alam and continue as a smaller Malaysian-owned company. Of course, Proton can reduce the size of their workforce or sell some assets like factory, but if you don't do it correctly, the result may be an organization that can barely function as a car company. As it stands now, Shah Alam has all the research and development facilities and some of the manufacturing capacity, while Tanjung Malim has the other half of their car production capacity. Installed, Shah Alam can produce 250,000 cars a year maximum, while Tanjung Malim can crank out 120,000 cars a year, giving them a capacity of nearly 370,000 units a year. That's a conservative estimate. Tanjung Malim has great potential because the land area allows for the expansion of the production capacity. And in fact, Proton City was designed to be their future hub as a global player. So they can, if they want to, operate entirely out of Tanjung Malim. But before they can do that, they will have to do several things, several important things. A rationalized Proton operating purely out of Tanjung Malim needs to invest in the factory to increase it to the full design capacity of 250,000 cars a year. And they also need to be flexible, so they need to move their medium volume factory, the multi-vehicle factory from Shah Alam to Tanjung Malim, because they will need to cover some niche markets which are some small volumes, and only this more flexible, smaller factory can do that for them. But the biggest investment would be moving the entire R&D facility to Tanjung Malim, and of course moving the HQ to Tanjung Malim as well. And the other thing that is not to be underestimated is the challenge of getting all the staff to move to Tanjung Malim will be quite great, because Tanjung Malim and the surrounding Proton City area still lacks in many things in terms of infrastructure. It doesn't even have a secondary school where children of staff can go to. So if Proton sells the Shah Alam land and factory and everything and operate leaner and meaner, can Proton survive on its own? Well, with the current open market conditions, we can see Toyota and Honda now offering products that are more price competitive. And Proton is continuing with their strong performance in the entry-level segment. So Proton really has very little room to maneuver. They're being squeezed in by Japanese brands and Korean brands from the top and by Proton from the bottom. Now, Proton's, to add to that situation, Proton's challenging financial position means that they will have difficulties spending money on new models, and they simply cannot continue to offer the same model after 5 years, because the other players have a 5-year model cycle and the market will move on, and this will make Proton cars even less attractive in the future. Now, apart from the money, which is very important, Proton also needs a fresh perspective and insight on what it needs to do to continue as a car maker. The auto industry demands a very high discipline and very high annual investment in research and development, and it punishes those who are not careful with their long-term model plan, with their technology acquisition, and also the market expects a new model to arrive every 5 years with better quality, with more features, and if at all possible, at competitive pricing. And everybody's doing that. This is even true in the entry-level segment where Proton is operating. Without a cash injection and a technology injection, Proton's chances of survival are not looking very rosy. But we don't want to have a fire sale. So what can Proton offer to the partners? Firstly, Proton is already a full-fledged manufacturer, which means that the new partner can immediately start to build cars and recover their investment. Secondly, any changes to the model lineup can be carried out in Malaysia at a competitive cost, because Proton has the engineering capabilities for adopting any new technology or platforms for the market. Thirdly, Proton can open up the Southeast Asian market for the partner. And as most people already know, Southeast Asia is one of the fastest growing market in the world, and all global car makers have their eye on this piece of the pie. Now, let us look at the companies that are rumored to be interested. Now, I say rumored because Proton or owner DRB has never officially announced who they are in talks with, but the walls have ears. So here's what we know so far. We know that there are 3 companies that are rumored to be interested. One is the Geely Group from China. The other one is the Renault Group from France, and also PSA Group, which is also from France. Now, PSA is Peugeot Citroën. So we know that these are 2 very iconic brands from France under the PSA Group. They are interested in Proton. The Renault Group, which consists of Renault, Nissan. Renault Group is now part of the Renault-Nissan Alliance. The Renault-Nissan Alliance is actually a separate joint venture company, which now has some very complicated share swap and whatever. But basically within that Renault-Nissan group, there is Renault, there is Nissan, there is Dacia, a Romanian car company. There is also Renault-Samsung, which used to be the Samsung car company from Korea, which went into liquidation in the late 90s and was bought up by Renault. They also just got acquisition of AutoVAZ, a Russian car maker, I think the biggest Russian car maker, which owns the Lada brand. And they just Nissan recently acquired Mitsubishi, so that's now also part of the fold. Geely, of course, owns actually many brands, but they have been rationalized to now just be presented as Geely. And then there's Volvo, which they acquired some 4 or 5 years ago. And then they have that curious London taxi company in their fold. Of course, Proton is Proton and the Lotus Group. In terms of sales, Renault Nissan is the third largest car maker in the world at 8.5 million cars. The PSA Group is in the top 10, running 3.25 million cars a year. While Geely, on their own, this year, I think is expected, in 2016, expected to have sold around 760,000 cars. And they had recently made an announcement that they're looking to achieve 1 million cars in 2017. Proton itself, in 2016, for their 2016-2017 financial year ending in March, they're hoping to achieve 120,000 cars. Now, of the three companies that are interested, Geely is privately owned, while the Renault Group has nearly 20% French government shares, and the French government also owns about 13% of PSA Group. These companies, they all have also technical alliances or alliances outside. The Renault Group is in bed with state-owned Dongfeng in China, which is so is the PSA Group. They both are represented in China by the Dongfeng Group, which builds various versions of Renault and Peugeot Citroën cars, and some of them are specially designed for China. Now, the PSA Group also works with BMW, producing the Prince engine, which is a highly regarded, award-winning engine, which is found in nearly all PSA products, as well as the Mini products. And Mitsubishi Group is also in a bit of a partnership with the PSA Group in producing the C0, which is actually the rebadged Mitsubishi MIEV, the electric vehicle. Toyota and the PSA Group is in a joint venture to produce small cars, specifically the C1 and the Peugeot 108, which is also branded as the Toyota Aygo. Meanwhile, Proton has a technical partnership with Honda, or rather they are given the Accord platform to do the Pradana, and there is a collaboration with Suzuki for the Ertiga. So which of these three companies, what do they offer? Clearly, they all have their strengths and weaknesses, but we're just going to look at what they can offer. So the PSA Group. The PSA Group, I think, is very interested in Proton because they have nearly no presence at all in the Southeast Asian market, because they have no other brands that are here at all. So for them, that would be an additional volume for the Southeast Asian market, and a new brand where they can reposition it more freely, because as you can imagine, the Peugeot and Citroën brand are very iconic, and it's quite difficult for them to simply position products or position the brand into territory where they're not familiar with, or they've never been in before. So having Proton in their stable will allow them to create new products or position the brand into a market or into a market segment that they've never been before, without any risk to the Peugeot or Citroën iconic brands. So that's what I think they are in the market for. They surely want to go up the ladder. At 3.2 million, they are doing okay, but clearly the automotive industry right now is in the mood for consolidation, given that I think they realize that there is a lot of disruptive technology that's coming up, and they need to consolidate and be stronger to face that. So the Renault Nissan Group, specifically, I think this one is the offer is coming from Renault, not from the Renault Nissan Group. So Renault is looking to increase their presence in Southeast Asia as well. So how this will work out within the Renault Nissan Group framework, we are not sure. While Nissan is well represented in Southeast Asia, Renault is not. And having Proton in their ranks will help them to compete in Southeast Asia. And I think because the positioning for Proton compared to brands that are already here that's in their stable, which is Nissan and Mitsubishi, is slightly different. when Nissan and Mitsubishi is considered maybe mainstream, not really premium, but family cars. They're not really entry-level brands. So Renault can use Proton as an entry-level brand below Nissan to support their marketing in Southeast Asia and their sales figures in Southeast Asia. So that's, I think, from the perspective of the Renault Group, that's what they want. Now, the Renault Group has a very wide range of product. But in terms of cars, they're not so wide-ranging. But if you include the Renault-Nissan alliance, then they have a very comprehensive range of products. And this would include commercial vehicles as well. And Renault has a very strong commercial vehicle arm as well. So and the Renault-Nissan group obviously has also a very strong commercial vehicle arm. And that's an interesting option if it should ever come to that. Geely, of course, this Chinese company, not really much is known about them yet. But we know that they are a very ambitious, privately owned company. Geely is one of the few car companies in China that has no real government ties. And Geely would also be happy to get the additional volume out of Proton. So if Proton can achieve, say, 200,000 units, then that would immediately help them to bring their target, them closer to their target of 1 million vehicles a year. Geely famously bought Volvo. And as we know, there are many issues concerning intellectual property rights infringements in China. There are many clone cars in China. And by clone, we mean that cars that copy the design of more established brands. And so when Geely wanted to buy Volvo, there were major concerns at that point expressed by owner Ford and also the Swedish government and also the European Union in general about how this would pan out, whether many of the intellectual property rights might just be transferred to China and you'll just start seeing copies of whatever technology that they have appearing out of China. So I think what had happened was that the owners, the previous owners, Ford and also the Swedish government, put in really clear terms about what can and cannot be done. Because the Chinese companies, they are very aggressive and they have this thirst for growth. So we need to balance our interests with their interest. And if done right, the way that we've done with Volvo, where Geely apparently gives them pretty much a free hand, just gives them the money, free hand, and supervise to make sure everything, I guess, is done on the up and up. And the result that we see is the first result is the new XC90 and the S80, and these are actually notable products, products that have gained high acclaim on the global market. So Geely can be a valuable partner, provided that we frame the terms correctly. But this is true of all the companies. They will all want to have all sorts of terms that are beneficial to them. So we need to balance out against what we want as a country and also what DRB wants as the owner of Proton when they sell off part of their stake in the company. So of the three, they all have their plus points. So it's now really up to DRB to evaluate what PSA, Renault or Geely can offer them. And this is not going to be an easy task for them. It's going to be very difficult because they need to see how, not only how much money they're going to get, but whether the two companies will be compatible in terms of their technology, in terms of their work culture, in terms of many things. Because at the end of the day, unless DRB is deciding to sell 100% of their shares in Proton to the new company, to the foreign partner, then they will want to enjoy being part of a profitable company, because there's no point in selling part of the company and then finding out that things will not work and things will break down. So it's important that not just that they choose the right company, it is also important for DRB to share with Malaysians on why this has to happen. And once they have decided to choose which company that they want to be their partner, they need to explain to us why this is the choice and why this is going to be good for Proton. Because it is a complex issue and many Malaysians will react emotionally. Now, as a motor journalist, we have friends in all the car companies. They are all our friends. So we are trying as best as we can to be objective and looking at them as our friends as well as contributors to the Malaysian economy and the auto industry. We want them to be able to continue to contribute in a meaningful way, and we don't want them to lose their jobs. At the same time, we want Proton to be able to rise again and fulfill the potential that it has as a Malaysian car company operating in Southeast Asia. So in that, I would like to conclude that this episode is far from over. In fact, we are not even ready with the first draft of what this is going to look like. We are just still guessing, and the fact that Malaysians have had expressed such strong reaction to the possibility of Proton being sold is I think a positive turn in the events, indicating that we do want Proton to do well, and we would like to support the right decision. So it's now really up to the companies involved to come up with an offer that makes sense for everybody, and then explain it to Malaysians, and I'm sure we will rally behind them and make it work, because we don't want to lose Proton. Even if it is a part of a global group, Proton is still our brand, it's still here, we can still be proud of it.